Barry King, everybody. That's great. Well, we got one more. Oh, you're leaving at the wrong time, because I want to introduce the funniest guy I know. Yeah, you're clapping now. Wait a few minutes. So, in contrast to Barry and his southern roots, you might notice from my twang that I'm not a native Ashevillean. I was born and raised in Bayside, Queens, New York. The safest place on the planet growing up in the 50s, once you were outdoors. Inside, not so much. The street I lived on in Bayside, we called Ittsville. And that's because we had Markowitz, Abramowitz, all the Itzes. My name is Robbins. I went to my grandfather. I said, Pop, I need a Jewish name. He said, how about Putz? Add insult to injury, he was our rabbi. I know, you feel sorry for me. Not bad. So a distinction between Asheville and growing up in New York is driving. Down here, if I'm driving behind a tractor, I'm more or less behind the tractor. In New York, we cut people off to get places we don't even want to go. Take this wedding. It was a long drive, and I had to go. I couldn't stand the bride, but I had to go. It was my wedding, so I had to go. Things started poorly. When my grandfather, Pop, put the glass on the floor, he said, let's watch Randy put his foot down for the last time. And sadly, he was right. I married an alpha woman, and I don't do well with alpha. Not great with beta either, I have to say. Ladies, how many of you read to your guys from women's magazines? Well, let me mansplain. Don't. One day I'm sitting watching a football game, and she's reading from Cosmo. And I hear the universal sign of pay attention. I look up. She says, it says here that men do not pay careful attention to genital hygiene. Now, what I thought was, what? But what I said was, what? And she replied, wash your balls. And we were married a long time. I wanted to please her. So I said, I'll wash them. I'll wax them. You have to give them back to me first. Don't feel sorry for me. There's a law in New York called equitable distribution. And as a result, I got one back in the divorce. So I hope you appreciated the work of my class today. Let's hear it for my comics. About 25 years ago, I took a class similar to what I teach now, and I learned a lot. Oh, I loved it. I had an instructor, and I followed him around to various clubs to watch him MC shows. And one time, I mean, he was fearless. One time he asked someone in the third row, what do you do for a living? And the guy said, I disinfect bowling shoes. He says, that is the worst job I have ever heard of. Points to the guy next to him, what do you do? I'm his assistant. So once I saw that, I felt, hey, I can do that too. So the one time I got to perform at the Improv in New York, I stood there and I asked the audience a question. And I got the same response that I'm getting right this very second, dead silence. I said, people, please, I need feedback. and a voice from the very back of the room calls out, "You suck." It was my sister. Immature, would you agree? Yeah, so I called Mommy. A lot of good that did. In New York, if you wanted to perform at an open mic, you needed to bring at least 6 paying customers. They would have to pay a cover charge and a 2-drink minimum. One time, I sent out 193 emails soliciting friends or people I knew to come and see me perform. I got back one response: "Delete me from your mailing list. I heard you suck. Love, Mommy." More recently, I went on ChatGPT. Familiar with it? Show of hands. Okay, you put in some variables and they'll print you out, they'll send you a response to what you're asking for. So I put in, I would like a 5-minute stand-up comedy routine. And I put in variables, grew up in Bayside, the 50s, all the things that I've told you so far. And I get back a response: "We're deleting you from our list." You won't be surprised to know I was a special ed teacher in New York City for 34 years. I worked with severely emotionally disabled children. And it was quite the experience. But just a brief example of what it was like. My job mostly was crisis intervention. If a kid is disrupting a class, it's my job to get him out, settle down, and back to class as quickly as possible. That's my job. One day I was called into the room of a 3rd grade class, and I had to remove a kid. I put my hand on his shoulder to guide him out. He said, "Don't touch me, faggot." All right, I'm a professional, I can handle this. Get him into the timeout room, find out what the problem was. It seems his bus was late, his teacher rushed him, and he didn't get enough breakfast. So he was mad and he acted out. So I got him some cereal, some milk, a banana. We talked about name calling, how inappropriate that is, and hurtful. Got him back to class. Great day, great success for me, great success for him. Next week, the same 3rd grader had to be removed, but he was having none of it. And he called me in front of everybody a big, fat, stupid, white, ugly motherfucker. Now, most of that's true. But ugly? That hurt. I have a very addictive personality. Throughout the years, I've been addicted to sugar, tobacco, weed, sex, gambling. I've been to 12-step programs like you've never heard of. You know, Steve Martin, the famous one, in his autobiography wrote, in the 1970s, sexual intercourse was just another way of saying hello. Well, I tried to say hello to a lot of women in the 70s. And you'll be surprised at this. I'm apparently not as cool as I look, because I was having trouble. So shamefully, hard to admit, but you won't tell anybody, I went to a meeting of Sexaholics Anonymous, hoping to meet a woman who might be available. And I learned that that's not quite the way to go, because she said, a woman, very attractive woman, who I had my eyes on, or upon whom I had my eyes. Is that right? You weren't listening? There you go. She said, I couldn't really begin to recover from this disease until I learned to love myself. And I said, honey, I could love myself 3-4 times a day. I still want to hook up. Yeah, they asked me to leave. So I've been to OA, Overeaters Anonymous, NA, Narcotics Anonymous, GA, Gamblers Anonymous, SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, you name it. Well, once I met a woman in New York, and she gave me her phone number. Oh, I was so excited. Put it away that night. I went home, looked at it, 5 digits. She gave me her zip code. Zip code was in Iowa. So I went to Iowa. I didn't find her, but I did find in a rural town an anonymous meeting that I had never heard of before. Maybe you've heard of it. It seems to be only in rural areas. It's called, oh my God, what's it called? BAA, Barnyard Animals Anonymous, colloquially known as BA. But it's a recovery meeting, and I sat there and I listened to a guy, and he's standing there and he says, thanks to God and the 12-step program of BA, I have not been with a female sheep since May 11th, 1989, for which I'm very grateful. Someone heard him say sheep, and he went, ew. Anyway, everyone stopped and applauded, and go, Jim, what a guy. Good job. He waited for it to quiet down, and he said, I haven't been with a male sheep since Tuesday. There you go. So the woke movement, this is the last thing I want to talk about, has ruined some of the great literature for children of all time. And I'm not talking about Snow White, you know, living with 7 dirty old men, okay? Or in Sleeping Beauty, the prince who got busted because he didn't ask permission to kiss Sleeping Beauty. I'm talking about real literature. I grew up learning how to read from the Dick and Jane Reader. Anybody familiar with it? Okay, well, they don't use it anymore. Apparently, there's something wrong with the language. Let me read to you. Tell me what you think. Jane said, I cannot find Dick. Help me, Sally. Help me find Dick. Sally said, Father, we cannot find Dick, and we cannot play. Father said, look, girls, look, look, look. Here is Dick. Here is Big Dick. Mother said, no, girls, that is not Big Dick. Here is Bubba. Here is Big Dick. The next chapter, when grandfather comes to town, you don't want to miss it. So I do children's shows. Tip your waiter. I want to thank you for coming. I want to remind you that outside we have a tip jar to benefit OLLI. Please be generous. And thank you so much for coming and enjoying the afternoon with us. Great to see you.